Hello and welcome. You're watching The Perspective, and the Supreme Court has finally delivered its verdict on the long-fought battle of the Babri Masjid-Ram Janambhoomi case. So the Supreme Court today, the 5-judge Constitution bench of the Supreme Court delivered over a 1,000-page long judgment and dwelled into various aspects of this of the issue of Babri Masjid and Ram Janambhoomi. Without wasting much time, we'll directly go to Abhinandan Mishra, who's joining us in this broadcast to understand. He has gone through the entire judgment that the Supreme Court had pronounced today on Saturday morning. So we'll go to Abhinandan Mishra to find out what were the essence, the principles, and what does he make out of the judgment pronounced by the Supreme Court today.
Thank you, Devendu. To be very honest, I have not been able to completely go through the 1,045 pages of judgment, right? But I have focused on the main parts of whatever that is. So what we can say is that this case was first, it went to the court in 1950 January when Gopal Singh, resident of Faizabad, he moved to the Faizabad district court seeking permission to pray in the inner sanctum sanctorum of the Ram Janambhoomi temple. Okay. So today's judgment, which was an unanimous one given by the 5-judge bench, has said that 2.77 acres, the main point of the contention between all the litigants, will be given to the Hindu party. Okay. And secondly, it has the second main point of the judgment is that it has given 5 acres to the Muslim party. Why it has given the 5 acres to the Muslim party? Because the court in its judgment has said that a big mistake was committed with the Muslims when the Babri Masjid was demolished in 1992. Right. To compensate for that, they have said, they have ordered the government, both the central government and the state government, that these parties should get, the Muslim party, the Sunni Waqf Board, as you rightly said, should be given 5 acres land to properly constitute make a mosque there. Mm-hmm. And the other important point of this judgment, which goes into 1,045 pages and is divided into 17 parts and 47 subpart, is that the judgment very clearly and repeatedly has said that it is not based on faith and belief. It is based on what the evidences were presented before the court. Right. So this becomes pertinent to mention here because, as you must be aware, in September 2010, when the Allahabad High Court gave a judgment in the case, they had tried to make everyone happy. Right. I mean, they had divided this 2.77 acres into 3 parties equally, and it was criticized, and rightly so, because as the Supreme Court judgment also said today, that they are not into what is the faith, what is the mythological part of the whole thing. They had just to decide. It was a civil suit. The land belongs to whom? And they found that the land belongs to the Hindu party.
Okay, right. So tell me, Abhinandan, the Supreme Court, as you said, has given this 5 acres of land to the Muslim party. But if the Supreme Court was dwelling into clear title suit. Right. So what made the Supreme Court, because the Muslims are crying that that it has been a consolation prize which has been given to the Muslim side of the judgment. So what makes the Supreme Court, if you could elaborate, as I know you said that it is because of the demolition that happened, but if you could elaborate as to what might have gone into the judge's head before they came to this, because they said that they're dealing it as a title suit.
Yeah. The reasoning that the Supreme Court has given while giving the 5 acres land to the Muslim litigant is the fact that they have recognized that there stood a mosque, Babri Masjid, for around 400 years in that particular place. Okay. So the court has said that something which was used by the Muslim litigants to pray was demolished by the Hindu rioters and the other parties in which a criminal case is already going on. So for that they have given them a 5-acre land that since a mosque was standing there, no one has disputed the fact that there was a mosque there. Right. Both the Hindu party and the Muslim. So So the court and everyone agreed to the fact that there was a mosque there, it was demolished, and to rebuild it, land was needed. And the Supreme Court said that we agree with that there was a mosque was there, it was demolished. So you have every right to rebuild a new mosque. So that's why they have said that 5 acres of land should be given to the Muslim litigants also.
Right. So Abhinandan, tell me, how did the court come to the conclusion that yes, the land should go to the Hindu litigants, and there existed a temple perhaps before before the mosque structure was erected by Babur? So how did the Supreme Court come to the conclusion as to what they came today?
As you will appreciate the fact that it is a more than 1,000-page judgment, and in that entire judgment they have dwelled extensively into the reasoning for giving this judgment. Right. So there is no one reason which they have ascribed to while giving these 2.7 acres to the Hindu litigants. For example, they have said that they have quoted from the ASI report. Right. The ASI report had found many things, that there existed a temple, there existed a structure which was buried inside the ground. Right. So, but the ASI has not been able to conclusively prove that it was a temple or not. Right. But there existed some kind of structure. Secondly, the court, the evidence that was presented before the court by both the Muslim party and the Hindu party, from that it was very clear that the Hindus used to pray on that side before the 12th century. Right? So the point is that if the Babri Masjid, and the Muslims said that the Babri Masjid, in their own admission, they said it was built in 1528. So before 1528, there was some proof which was given by the ASI that there existed some kind of structure there. Right. So that is one thing. And then secondly, thirdly, the Supreme Court also relied on the memoirs and the travelogues that were published by the ancient travelers. And then the Supreme Court relied on some of the property documents that were presented before them. So it didn't rely on just one fact. It relied on multiple level of facts to come to the conclusion that this 2.77 acres belongs to the Hindu party.
Okay. So the Supreme Court, has basically asked the central government to form a trust, which many calls it as an Ayodhya trust. Yeah. So the trust will be, if you can explain, I have a brief idea about what the trust would be. Yeah. The trust would basically oversee the transfer of land and the construction of temple. So could you help us understand and elaborate more on the role of the government now and on the trust?
The government already has 67 acres of land around that area, around where the temple existed and the mosque existed. So the government has already bought the 67 acres of area that's around that particular region. So what this trust will do, as per the Supreme Court guideline, is that it will come into existence within the 3 months of the judgment. Right. So it will have to come into existence by January, February end. And it will oversee everything. It will include the transfer of the land to the litigants. It will also oversee the construction of a temple. Right. And the Supreme Court judgment has also said that preferably the land to the Muslim litigant should be given as quickly as it is being given to the Hindu party. So that is there.
Okay. So coming back again to the judgment, we'll dwell further into the judgment. So there has been a dissent note, if I'm not wrong. There has been, if you can explain.
That is not a dissent note. That is something called addendum. Addendum is not a part of the judgment, but it's a remark made by one of the judges. So it is not a part of the judgment, but we can say it's an annexure. So in that annexure, the identity of the judge who has wrote has not been mentioned in the judgment. So basically, the addendum addresses the issue of why one of the judges who wrote that addendum thought that Ram is a concept of belief. So he has dwelt with that. It's a part of, the addendum.
Addendum is 116 pages additional document.
So it basically dwells into the faith aspect of the whole thing. Why the judges, why Ram is a thing of faith.
So again, this is contradicting, right, Abhinandan? Because the court has reiterated the fact that they are not dwelling into faith. They are not in the business of adjudicating on the matter of faith and belief. So again, 116 pages.
Okay. The title suit, the land belongs to whom,
right,
has been decided on the basis of the evidence that was presented to them. But as we all know that one of the party to the whole case was Ram Lalla.
Right.
Ram Lalla is who?
It was Baby Ram.
So Ram is a very intrinsic part of the whole case.
Right.
Okay, we cannot ignore that.
Right.
So that's what the judges have also said, that we cannot ignore that. But we are not deciding when it comes to deciding the land belongs to whom. We are not going to decide by the concept of Ram, but they have, as I think in a correct manner, they have focused on the religious and the faith aspect of this whole thing, because obviously it's a whole thing about Ram temple, right? So
they couldn't ignore the fact that it is about a temple.
Yeah.
Okay. So last, if you could, before we wrap this up, if you could explain if there are other things that you pick up from the judgment, because you have gone through it, other important aspect which our viewers should know about the judgment, if you could help our viewers know about it.
My understanding of the judgment is that it's a very balanced judgment.
Right.
And secondly, I also believe that the court, while giving 5 acres to the Muslim community, the Muslim litigants, it has done a very good job. Because if we go strictly by law, if we go strictly by what the court was dealing with, it was dealing with that particular 2.77 acres.
Right.
So it decided that this belongs to the Hindu litigants.
Right.
But then it also kept in mind that some wrong was committed against the Muslims when their Babri Masjid was destroyed. So the court couldn't ignore that, despite that particular issue not being in front of the court, right? So the court did a very good thing by giving these 5 acres to the Muslim Muslim litigants. And as I say, as the judgment also says, that the court has to keep so many things in mind. When I am saying that and the court is also saying that they decided the case on the basis of evidence, not faith.
Right.
It means that the faith was already there, but when it came to deciding the who
owns the 2.77 acres of land,
that belongs to the Hindu, because of the evidence that was presented, not because of it related to Ram or someone else,
or a majoritarian faith.
Absolutely, the court has made this very clear.
So do you have any other points to add which will bring out the essence that how the 5 judges came together, sat over
a very important part of this whole judgment is that it was an unanimous judgment. So, imagine if it was maybe 3:2. 3 would have agreed to this judgment and 2 would have said that they are dissenting for this reason. So this case would not have ended.
Right.
Now I think the closure has been achieved in this particular case.
Right. So as Abhinandan has rightly explained to us the basics of the judgment, he has broken it up well for all our viewers to understand what the judgment actually was in this case that had stuck in the courts of this country for a very long time, and finally we see a closure in this case. We'll hope the case finally settles and this matter rests for time to come. So thank you for watching The Perspective. This is what we had for you in this episode of The Perspective. As we move throughout the course of the week, we'll have more stories on explaining you the verdict further. Thank you so much for watching The Perspective. Do like our channel, do subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and do like our video and share in your comments. Thank you so much.